It is in as the Supreme Court in a landmark judgment orders local government funds to be paid directly to local government accounts, bars governors from dissolving democratically elected LG chairpersons in line with the Constitution. Former Governor Kano State and APC National Chairman Abdullahi Ganduje absent in court for the trial over allegations of bribery and misappropriation of funds. Judge insists proceedings will continue despite his absence. Hello and welcome to Politics Today, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzon. It's a big show today. Yes, big landmark judgment coming from the Supreme Court. But all of that we're going to explore later on the show. And I'm sure you've been following the news as far as that is concerned. But let's tell you what other things we've been tracking in the polity. Let's begin from Kano State, where the State High Court has ruled that the trial of the All Progressives Congress chairman, Ms. Abdullahi Ganduje, his wife Hafsat Umar, and others accused of bribery and misappropriation of funds will continue even in their absence. The state government had filed an 8-count charge against the defendants, alleging bribery, misappropriation, and the diversion of public funds amounting to billions of naira. Justice Amina Adamu Aliyu dismissed their application for a bench warrant and entered a plea of not guilty on their behalf. The prosecution counsel, Mr. Adiola Dedikwe, SAN, highlighted that the service had been effected on the defendants and an affidavit of service was filed on June the 6th. He requested the court to enter a plea of not guilty for the absent defendant and urged for a bench warrant of arrest, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the court's authority. He stressed that the essence of the arrest is to uphold the court order as the defendants had refused to appear despite being summoned. However, counsel for the sixth respondent, Mr. Nurini Jimo SAN, argued that the service was not properly effected and questioned the court's jurisdiction over the charges, among other arguments. Justice Adamu Aliyu adjourned the case until October the 23rd and 24th for the hearing of the preliminary objection on the substantive issue. Now, the three-man panel of the Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja and presided over by Justice Onyekachi Otisi has affirmed the election of Mr. Usman Ododo as the governor of Kogi State. The court held that the Kogi State governorship election petition tribunal verdict, which upheld it and affirmed Mr. Ododo as the duly elected governor of Kogi State in the November 11, 2023 election after dismissing the appeal filed by the Social Democratic Party candidate, Mr. Moktala Ajaka. The appellate court, while resolving all 4 grounds of appeal against the SDP and Mr. Ododo, declared that the destiny of the appeal is not in the cloud and therefore dismissed it without cost.
In any event, we were not able to even bring evidence to show what was presented and whether the document qualifies as a certificate for the purposes of the Constitution. Then on the issue of non-compliance, they hint all their case on a witness who testified without a witness deposition from the authorities of Peter Obi and all the series of cases of the Supreme Court, which are quite clear on the point that a witness who does not testify with a front-loaded deposition is not a competent witness. Whether the trial court was at judgment, realized it made an error in admitting the document, it can expunge same at any time, and that's the take-home from this judgment. So we are very pleased with it, and we are very grateful. We look forward to the next step to be taken up from the appellants.
The second respondent presented forged certificate to INEC. We brought in documents to prove that. We called 3 witnesses, PW2, PW3, PW24, to substantiate that. However, in the wisdom of the Court of Appeal, they said that is a pre-election issue. We believe that this may not be the end of the story because democracy in our country is on crutches. It requires redemption. And we are hopeful that the final court of the land will step in and redeem the situation so that our future and our democracy will be safeguarded and protected.
Now, we're not done with the court. Let's get to the big one. The Supreme Court has ruled that the federal government should henceforth pay allocations directly to local government councils from the Federation account. Delivering judgment in the suit instituted by the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, a 7-member panel of the justices held that the state government have continued to abuse their powers by retaining and using the funds meant for local government areas. The Apex Court also ordered the federal government to withhold allocations to local governments governed by unelected officials appointed by the governor. Justice Emmanuel Agim, who read the lead judgment, states that they are mandated to ensure that their local government councils are democratically elected and that governors cannot use their powers to dissolve democratically elected local government councils.
The judgment on local government autonomy have just been delivered by the Supreme Court. We will get the certified true copy of the judgment as a body, the body of State Attorneys General of the Federation. We'll study it and then we'll come up with our statement on it.
First of all, as far as I'm concerned, there's no winner, there's no loser. The Nigerian people will enjoy the benefits of good governance. I think this has been in the clamor for a long time. It's not personal. What is important is that the people will hold chairmen now more accountable because the funds are going directly to them. And I think that it is time for us to move this discussion forward. For us, this is phase one. There is phase two that is coming. When we get to the bridge, we'll cross it.
Well, the president has also responded. It appears he's very excited about the judgment of the Apex Court, directing LG funds to be paid directly to the local government account. He says ineffective governance at the local level has hampered development at the grassroots for many years, which judgment is expected to reverse that particular situation. In a statement by his spokesperson, Ms. Hajirin Galali, the president says, in his words, "My administration instituted this suit because of our unwavering belief that our people must have relief. And today's judgment will ensure that it will be only those local officials elected by the people that will control the resources of the people. This judgment stands as a resounding affirmation that we can use legitimate means of redress to restructure our country and restructure our economy to make Nigeria a better place to live in and a fairer society for all our people." While commending the Attorney General and Minister of Justice Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, the president expects Nigerians to hold the leaders at the local level to account, who must ensure resources are used for the good of the generality of the people. So that is going to be one of the major conversations we'll be having today, because its landmark is a big one as far as administration of local government is concerned. But we'll bring you our political roundup story first.
The House of Representatives is set to investigate the cause of the lingering dispute between the Police Service Commission and the Inspector General of Police. The House believes that this is necessary to proceed with the recruitment process without further delay. Meanwhile, a bill seeking the creation of ATT State in Southeast has scaled second reading in the House. The bill, which was sponsored by Amobi Oga, is seeking the creation of the state out of the existing Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Imo states. Leading the debate on the bill, Mr. Oga says the bill seeks to address a long-standing issue of regional poverty and administrative efficiency within the Southeast geopolitical zone.
I move that an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, to provide for the creation of a TT state out of Abia State, Anambra State, Ebonyi State, Enugu State, and Imo State.
The Attorney General of the Federation and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, are advocating the quick passage of laws to protect whistleblowers. Speaking at a conference in Abuja to mark the African Union Anti-Corruption Day, the AGF and the EFCC said the absence of a law that protects whistleblowers makes it difficult for people to expose acts of corruption.
There have, however, been calls for strengthening the policy with a law that protects more the whistleblowers. In this regard, we must collaborate with the legislature to ensure that this law is passed.
Meanwhile, the Presidential Committee on Compressed Natural Gas Initiative says it is giving out CNG kits to commercial transport operators of various unions and will also install the kits free of charge to reduce the cost of fuel in the vehicles and reducing the general cost of transportation. According to the program director, Michael Oluwagbemi, the initiative, which will see the committee roll out 20,000 conversion kits, will also give a 50% discount to ride-hailing companies. And the governor of Edo State, Governor Obaseki, says a full account of all his activities since the beginning of his administration in 2016 will be ready by October 30th in preparation for a smooth transition to a new government. The governor made this known while inaugurating the transition committee at the executive chambers of the government house in Benin City, the Edo State capital. The committee will be headed by a former commissioner for finance in the state, Joseph Eboigbe, to oversee the preparation of the handover note, which will be in a digital format.
The team will look and retrieve all documents and all other related materials.
Lastly, an election petition tribunal sitting in Jalingo, the Taraba State capital, has affirmed the election of Sadiq Abbas of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, as the winner of the Jalingo Yoro Zinc Federal Constituency by-election held on 3rd February 2024. The panel of three judges led by Justice Chudi Nwankwo dismissed the petition filed by the candidate of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, Innocent Jabayang, on the grounds of alleged overvoting and non-compliance with the electoral law for lacking in merit.
Two major things happened today in the country. One is the big one from the Supreme Court, which we're going to get to in a moment. My guest, Professor Odin Kaluchidi, will be joining me in a moment. But also today, the president met with the organized labor. Remember, 62,000 naira proposed by the federal government and private sector. Labor is demanding 250,000 naira to be the amount to be paid to the least paid worker. They got into a meeting with the president because it became critical that before the president will proceed to the National Assembly, he had told Nigerians, I will consult further, and today he met with them. So before we get to that big conversation about the issue of the local government autonomy, which I'm sure local governments, 774 of them, are super excited about, and my guest is going to do justice to it, let's talk to the NLC president to get his perspective on the outcome of that particular meeting with them and the president. Mr. Joe Ajero is the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Ajero, thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Ajero, can you hear me, Mr. Ajero?
I can hear you clearly.
All right, absolutely. I know that the Supreme Court verdict is not part of your conversation in the meeting, but I just want to take your response, a quick response on the outcome of that judgment that now says local governments now have to collect their money directly from the federation account. Before we get your take on what happened in that meeting with the president.
Well, that's a very landmark judgment. For almost 9 years, the trade union movement have been persistently doing rallies insisting on local government autonomy. The former president of the local government union, in few occasions, almost passed away in the exhaustion that followed state-to-state protests and rallies, emphasizing on the need for local government autonomy. And we have continuously sustained it. When this relief came, everybody in the trade union movement seemed to be happy. And we're going to cap it up with a rally maybe next week to celebrate this victory. It's worth the while.
Absolutely. So let's now move on to the reason we invited you. The president had promised that he will consult further, and you had advised him, I think, while you were at the ILO conference, to say, look, don't just be quick, consult further, and he has done that. So what was the conversation really? What would you say is the outcome of this particular meeting with the president?
Well, the conversation was, in the first instance, preliminary. And then we moved into the real issues. Of course, that's exactly what government has been talking about on the issue of ability to pay. And then why we
maintain our position on the quantum of what is paid, on the inflationary trend, and comparatively, the wage, even in 1980s, that was 125 naira, and now 60,000. And then we gave all this analysis to Mr. President, and what 60,000 can buy now. After all those analyses, he was of the view, that the issue of money, particularly, Mr. President was talking of that labor did not allow him to totally deregulate. He doesn't know where to get the money, and gave us comparative analysis of what PMS is selling all over the West African, and they're depending on smuggling from Nigeria. So we looked at all that, but the trade union movement doesn't want to take a further increase in the minimum wage to any further other tariff increase or increase in PMS. However, we got an understanding on the frequency of review of minimum wage. That one, we're on the same page, to reduce the frequency to 2 to 3 years, as the case may be. And then we are joined to further our conversation on the issue of new minimum wage. Whereas at the end of the meeting, the position of Labour on 250 and that of the government on 62,000 still was standing, no result.
So by the explanation that the president has given, from what you've said, the comparative analytics it did with the sub-region and all of the intricacies in between all of that, is Labour willing to shift ground, and is the federal government also willing to take it further beyond the amount they are standing on based on the body language in the room that you are seated in?
The issue of even 250,000, not even being enough, is not in contention. Anybody can shift ground, but if it is attached to some other issues that will even worsen that 250 or whatever you are going to take, then it will spare doom economically. However, assuming which we stated there, assuming the CNG, which we agreed with this government a year ago, has been implemented, the cost of living would have been reduced. You can move goods and services from one point to the other. Mr. President agrees to this. And then, even in terms of bringing the infrastructure for the CNG, if you have a CNG vehicle or bus moving from here to Kaduna, you should find a station where you can refill. Although they were talking of hybrid, yes, if you are talking of hybrid, there will be stations for you to refill both PMS and CNG. Those are the issues we looked at. And we raised again the issue of refinery, especially Port Harcourt refinery, which they promised last December. And now, Mr. President stated clearly that from what is happening there, he wouldn't want to make another commitment, that tomorrow may not be fulfilled in terms of that. And we went further to equally explain to him that as of today, the minimum wage is 30,000. And the wage award, which we agree with the president and the government, told, as of today, they are owing workers there from March, April, May, June, 4 months. Yes. And that if you add that 35,000 to 30,000, you already have 65,000. And there was peculiar allowance for those in the federal government, approved by President Buhari, which added another 12,000, making it 72,000. That we are not here to negotiate wage reduction, and then you can't pay somebody something less than what is entering his pocket. So all these things are there for further conversation on this matter.
Well, we're glad that the conversation continues. But just as we begin to wind down on this one, as a matter of fact, the government is they are owing Labour by 2 months, because I know they had promised on May the 1st that it will be effective from May this year. So we're already in July. So we have May, June, and then July is almost ending. How much more time are you willing to give to the president and the federal government to conclude talks? Else you may take another action.
Well, I think the last minimum wage expired by April 18th. So they started owing by April, April 18th, then May, June. Now, we don't have the luxury of time. Although Mr. President equally said that if we go on strike, at the time he has to read his papers and all that, So those are options. We don't have the luxury. We equally have to be meticulous. We equally have to be patient, which is what we are doing now to make sure that we pass through the whole process. Time is ticking, and we believe that this is the last level where we are, the level of consulting with Mr. President as the father of the nation. If we finish this level, discover that, we don't have any further step to go.
All right, Mr. Ajoro, I asked that question. Well, I'm sure you're giving the president the benefit of the doubt. So just in 10 seconds, will you give the federal government the end of the month, the end of August? When exactly are we talking about here?
Well, that is not on our table now in the conversation. By the time we finish meeting next week, we'll take it back to our organs.
Okay.
And the directive, we are going to follow it up.
Well, thank you so much for coming through. Mr. Ajoro is the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Had a meeting with the president just this afternoon on the way forward over the impasse concerning new minimum wage. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, we will now shift gears to this big landmark judgment over the issue of local government autonomy. The federal government are taking the states to court through the Attorney General of the Federation, and the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi SAN, has actually gotten judgment. And we want to have that conversation with the legal mind, the former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Nkalo. But before that, let me show you a few things that has to do with this particular judgment. So if my producer can take me to the very first slide on this particular one that has to do with what the contention is. So you can see, yes, this one. Okay, not this one. This has to do with democratically elected officials being guaranteed. This is where one of the statements made, okay, this is the one I'm talking about. So by principle, let's hold it there on the first one, please. By principle, this is how allocation. If we can go back to that very 162 sub 2, please. If we can go back there. All right. So oh boy. Okay, let me just say basically on this particular issue, there are a couple of legislation. So this particular one has to do with the principle of allocation. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see where the contention is. Can we go to the next slide, please? Let's see. All right, if you hold it here, 162 subsection 3, any amount standing to the credit of the Federation account shall be distributed among the federal and state governments and the local government council in each state on such terms and in such manner as may be prescribed by the National Assembly. I needed you to see that provision of the Constitution, which is one of the premise of the decision of the Supreme Court. So there are other sub that has to do with the local government and the states. So what happens is that when we make money as a federation, it goes into the federation account. Then they share the money among the 3 tiers of government. The federal government takes theirs. So for instance, in May, the federal government took about 360-something billion. The state government took about 388 billion. The local government took about 280-something billion. And then 13% derivation, about 100 billion. But what happens is that when it gets to the state, is the state and the local government account into what they call JAC, Joint Account Allocation Committee. That is where the crisis began. So the federal government is saying, states are not doing enough to allow the local government run government independently as a tier of government. So they want to separate it. So now it's not going to JAC. It's going to go straight from the federal government directly to the local government accounts. That's why we're having this conversation. I'm being joined in the program by Professor Chidi Nkalo, former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Prof, thank you so much for your patience and for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me, my brother. Good evening.
My first question to you, is this one kind of a chokehold of the neck of good governance. Some people say perpetuated by governors. Is this how you will characterize the situation and the judgment of the court today?
I want to be quite clear. I've not seen the judgment, and I refrain as a matter of principle from commenting on judgments I've not read. So I will not comment on what the Supreme Court is reported to have said today. Having said that, I don't think that the issues are as easily compartmentalized as people would like to report. I think the question of local government accounts and what happens to them is a little more complex than we try to make out.
Go ahead. We're listening to you, sir.
Now, you see, this you've got to step back a little. This is not just about taking money, sending money to local governments. This is about how we derive the legitimacy of the mandate to govern in Nigeria. And here, the Supreme Court has to be held responsible for generating very squalid jurisprudence that has given us bandit elections, all right? Elections are lacking in legitimacy as a result of what the Supreme Court has done, not today, but over the years since at least 2003. And as a result, it is difficult to see a situation in which local government chairpersons, who are the products of CX, that are totally owned by the state governors, can really be autonomous. Because most of them, with a few exceptional exceptions, with a few outliers, most of them lack the legitimacy that they can trade in for the authority to call the state governors to order. Without understanding that, I think we commit grievous error thinking that sending money straight to local government chairpersons will all of a sudden create what does not exist.
So in your view, I know that personally too, and a lot of people like yourself who are luminaries in this space would not want to comment on judgment they've not seen the CTC. It gives us a guide as to the reasoning of the Lord Justices to be able to know exactly how they arrived at their conclusion or their judgment. But in your view, how necessary is this judgment in the long run? Let's start from there.
Frankly, I don't think the issue is where the money goes to. The question, in my view, is how legitimate is the mandate of the person to whom the money goes to. I'll give you an example. In 2017, Benue State organized local government elections. The elections took place on a Saturday. On the following morning on a Sunday, the chairperson of the Benue State Independent Electoral Commission announced that the ruling party, which was the APC then, had won all the seats and all seats and offices that were contested in that election. And when he was asked what the tallies were, he said they were still tallying. How do you announce outcome of a result of an election in which the tallies had not yet been done? Now, if you are elected as a local government chairperson from that kind of election, you don't have the legitimacy to tell the governor, I will not send you the money that I have received from Abuja. Okay? This is the problem. And where does that come from? It comes from the Supreme Court giving jurisprudence that says elections are things in which anything can go. That is entirely at the doorstep of the Supreme Court. And so what am I saying? The Supreme Court cannot say on the one hand, you can organize anything and call it elections. And on the other hand, well, send money directly to the local government areas or local government councils. Those two streams of jurisprudence are entirely at odds with one another. Illegitimate mandates lead to lack of democratic dividends. And illegitimate I don't know, if you were in Abuja yesterday, Did you see that all the politicians, all important politicians in the country, were attending the swearing in of judges by the Chief Justice? Do you know why? Because the people who have the votes to put politicians in office now are no longer the voters, are no longer citizens like you and I. It is the judges. That is where the politicking takes place. The tyranny of illegitimate mandates created by the jurisprudence of this Supreme Court renders the judgment they have given today hollow, in my view, quite pyrrhic.
So I can understand. So are you referring to the 2023 election, to be precise? Because I see that you keep going back. I understand what you're saying as to the fact that, look, before we jump to the issue of the monies, let's talk about the mandate of the people that will receive the money or otherwise. So are you referring to the 2023 election, to be precise on this particular one, so we'll get the frame of reference?
You heard me say beginning from at least 2003 elections. I was very specific. I said beginning from at least 2003 elections. It didn't start, this is not an event. It's been a cascade to where we are now. And I gave you the example of Benue State 2017. And so I'm not here to relate it. If you get stuck in one incident, I can't help you. But I think it is because all of us are Nigerians. I'm not going to come to your program and start lying to you and start saying things I don't believe in. Because if anybody picks me up, I want to say I believe in what I say. If you want to kill me, shoot me. And I'm telling you that the Supreme Court is responsible for illegitimate mandates, and coming to tell us where money goes is irresponsible of this Supreme Court.
How do you mean that is irresponsible of them? Because this is the apex court. Whatever decision comes from the court, there's the argument as to how it is perceived, the biases, the outcome, and all of that. So now they are
I'm a citizen of Nigeria by birth. I'm a citizen of Nigeria by descent. I'm a citizen of Nigeria by choice. What these people do affects me as a Nigerian. And so when I speak as a Nigerian, I don't yield. It is irresponsible, on the one hand, to tell us that anything can go as an election, that elections can be conducted without standards. Go back and read the judgment of the Supreme Court in Buhari against Yar'Adua from 2008. That exactly is what the Supreme Court decided, okay? They decided that you could organize elections without serialized ballot papers. They decided that elections did not have to be governed by underlying principles with respect to credibility.
All right.
Nikki Toby delivered that judgment. When you read that judgment, and then you read the consequences that have followed since then, you will understand why I am saying what I am saying. That when you have created a jurisprudence of illegitimate mandates, you cannot then expect local governments that are accountable.
But
as a matter of fact, you cannot expect politicians that are accountable at any level. That is why the country is being pauperized, because politicians who lack legitimate mandates cannot give you democratic dividend.
Let's move on to say that this has been decided by court. The 2023 elections, all of the elections that you're referencing, you said at least 2023 election, they'll be decided by the apex court.
No, I said at least. No, sir. I said at least 2003 elections, not 2023. Yes. At least 2003. That is over 21 years ago.
Okay, my apologies. So let's say all of that has been decided. Now we are moving forward, given what we have on our hands. So as much as you haven't seen the CTC, I understand that, but the preliminary conversation is the fact that monies can now go to local government. How should we be expecting this to be executed for the good of the people at the end of the day? Because the situation that has to do with the governors on one hand, sometimes you can't hold them to account. The House of Assembly, arguably appendages to the governor, and now we have these resources in the hands of local authority. How should Nigeria approach this in ensuring that, according to what the president has said, look, the people must hold the local governments to account to ensure that the monies are spent judiciously for the good of the people, in your view?
You see, this is the problem. We like to move ahead without looking at where we're coming from. It's not possible, my brother. Huh? That is exactly why we're here. And then when you ask the person, they say, oh, we leave it to God. God does not vote in Nigeria. God is not a registered voter. God does not work in INEC. God is not a police officer. God does not rig elections. Human beings do. So we cannot move forward from things that are dreadful, because those are the consequences that we get as president. And those are the consequences those are the outcomes that saddle us with the consequences that we live with. As I said, if you go to give this money now to a local government chairperson who has been installed in a rigged election, controlled entirely by the governor, what this person is going to do is collect the money and hand it back to the governor. So all you're doing is altering the sequence by which the money gets back to the governor, but the money will still get back to the governor. And the reason the money will still get back to the governor is because the mandate, as a matter of jurisprudence set up by the Supreme Court, is not with the people. The mandate is with the politicians and the judges. Until we address that, we are wasting time devoting too much effort to passing this jurisprudence that I have not read.
I understand you perfectly, Prof. One of the things that the Supreme Court said today is the fact that for local government that don't have democratically elected officials, money should not be sent to them, which is why I'm asking you that question, how we can safeguard. So on one hand, the court has done its bidding to say, if you're a caretaker committee or whatever name or appendages or whatever nomenclature you go by, if you're not elected, forget about this money, federal government don't send it to them. That's on one hand. Now you've alluded to the fact that it's just going to be a change of schemings. The local government may collect the money and give it back to the governor. My question is, how do we safeguard that?
It is up to the politicians. Look, the president now went through the same thing with Obasanjo when Obasanjo held up their monies. If that is the consequence, when he was governor of Lagos State, if that is the consequence they want to live with or they want to afflict others with, by all means, you see, the thing about politics is that, you live by the swings of the pendulum. Sooner or later, this thing will come around. It may take 1 decade, it may take 20 years, but it's going to turn around. And the incidents of impact will be somewhere else, probably on the people inflicting it today. 20 years ago, it was PDP doing the inflicting. Today, it is the APC doing the inflicting. The problem, until we settle the origins of the mandate to set up government, until we address the legitimacy of the political authority at all levels, federal, state, and local, that people lay claims to, on the basis of which to administer our the public good and the commonwealth, we are going to be dealing with all these band-aids. What has come out today, in my view, is worse than a confection band-aid, if you ask me.
So how should local government be funded, in your view? And what should now be the relationship between local government and state, now that this is what is in our hands?
We are in an asymmetrical conversation. You're focused on funding of local government. I'm focused on the legitimacy of those who exercise power in order to use that money. And I'm telling you that as long as the legitimacy is fractured and fundamentally and structurally flawed on the basis of Supreme Court jurisprudence, the conversation as to funding of local government is not very helpful. Because howsoever that money comes, if the legitimacy is not founded in the legitimate will of the people, that money is going to be funneled back into the same corrupt criminal franchises that we have today, masquerading as different levels of power. And therefore, there will be the beneficiation, the democratic beneficiation that we are expecting to inure in favor of the people will not happen. And I am sure that on that, both of you can agree. Both of us can agree that what we're looking for here is how best to look after the interests of our people. And if local government worked, local government were legitimate, that would happen. But if local government is not legitimate, that will not happen.
Prof, of course, we're going to have that conversation about this issue of legitimacy and the issue of jurisprudence and the calls of court as far as our elections are concerned on this particular matter. But I know that you would like to speak on one more issue, and you mentioned it in passing. The reason I wanted you to explore this issue of the finances of local government, which is quite important because we've not seen this done in a very long time. And now we're still talking about the issue of the elections, which is totally fine. But we understand where you're coming from. But let's talk about something you have mentioned in passing. The issue of, I know you retweeted something from a gentleman called Joseph Onora. The man said, many of those sworn in yesterday as Court of Appeal judges, a worrisome number are first-level politically exposed persons at filial dimensions. What is it that makes wives and immediate friends of politicians the most suitable for a highest court? Now, it's a bit of a dilemma. If somebody is qualified to occupy the court and is related to a politically exposed person, should that person backtrack because of the politically exposed persons, because of the fear of what we have in our polity?
The question is, what does being qualified mean? That's the question we've got to address. So I'll give you an example. The wife of Yahaya Bello was cleared by the State Judicial Service Commission in Kogi State to be appointed a judge of the Kogi State High Court. She had never practiced as a lawyer. She had never taught. She had never researched. She had never administered courts. The one thing she had administered to the best of her ability was the bedroom of her husband. And the only thing that precluded her from being appointed ultimately by the National Judicial Council, recommended for appointment, was that her husband fell out with, you know what, under what circumstances. I'm not going to go into the details of that here. Now, but was she qualified? Of course she was qualified. What are the qualifications? You've been a lawyer admitted to practice for 10 years. You know the number of people who make that threshold? So the idea that somehow the only people now who are qualified to be judges are people found in the bedrooms of politicians, senior politicians, or the bedrooms of senior judges is utterly nonsensical. Utterly nonsensical. Now you look at the list that has been produced of new judges of the City High Court. 8 of them out of 12, about 60%, are the children of serving or recently retired judges. How mathematically, statistically, how possible is that?
All right.
So this is an utterly rigged process of mutual intercourse between politicians and judges. The politicians rely on the judges to get them into office. The judges rely on politicians to advance them into transactions. This is entirely what it is, and it is despicable.
I understand you hold your opinion, and that is totally respected. But I wanted to be safe around not impugning on the integrity of the entire institution, given the practices of some. But before I let you go, sir,
I'm not impugned on anybody. I am giving you proportions and numbers. I said there are 12 people who were. I've not abused anybody here. I've not laid any hand on anybody's integrity. I'm just giving you the facts. And the facts, you see, this is the problem here. Even the facts you're afraid of. You're afraid of these facts because these facts only.
No, I'm not afraid of any facts. I'm a journalist. I'm not afraid of facts. I'm just explaining the position of the conversation. All right, Prof. There's a question.
This is a corrupt system.
Well, yes, the opinions are divergent depending on who you're listening to. So I cannot be a court of law to myself on the program. My job is to ask questions, which I'm asking you, and we respect your opinion as well. But I needed to be clear on the integrity of the entire institution. But Prof, there's one question I would like you to answer for me before we go, which is, you've mentioned the fact that based on the jurisprudence you've seen, you're not excited about a couple of things coming from our court. Understood. In an ideal situation where the gray areas and the doubts that you've shown or expressed are taken care of, how should local government be funded? I'm back to that question, but this time in an ideal situation.
I cannot give you an ideal situation because, one, I'm not Babalawo. Two, I live in a real world. The real world is what we've got to try and iron out. And I'm not going to run shy of that real world and start manufacturing an ideal situation that we can't even contemplate, and we are unwilling to contemplate. Because that ideal situation we want that begins with local government councils that have political legitimacy, in which the people who exercise leadership at the local government level are directly and lawfully lawfully and manifestly elected by the people. When that happens and you send money to the local government, the persons who run the local government will have the authority to be able to tell governor, no, I am the person who will suffer the political consequences of you trying to steal this money, so I will not do what you want me to do. But if the governor has installed this person in the expectation of a quid pro quo, the person will not have the authority to push back. And that is why this judgment today is worse than a hologram.
Professor Chidiode Kalu is the former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. We must thank you for coming on the program. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thanks, sir.
We'll go on a quick break now. When we come back, continue the conversation. Join us again.
We dey like beans and rice. And those people, I will never leave your side. I will never ever. I dedicate my time forever, time to you, my people. Even if the road be rough, I know mine. 'Cause together we shall stand.
Make we all come out on election day and vote Olumide Osaigbavo Akpata, Una guy, as governor of Edo State. He ready to change our story and bring better life for we and our pikin them. Vote Labour Party, the party for Papa, Mama and pikin. Make we vote well, oh. Oludi, confirm. Now you be our guy. Labour Party, forward ever.
Olumide Akpata.
It is new, it is unique and of international standard. Maduka University. Maduka University, a modern university of international standard with modern facilities for learning, committed to training entrepreneurs across different fields of human endeavor, offers admission to students in different courses such as law, accounting, medical lab science,
cyber security, mechatronics,
mass communication, nursing, pharmacy, ICT, computer engineering, civil engineering, JUBE program, and a lot more. Maduka University is located in an environment of serenity, safety, and security at Ekwebe, Nsukka, Enugu State. For more inquiry, visit our website, madukauniversity.edu.ng, or call 0805-509-1802 or 0915-789-3107. Maduka University, the place for the transformation you seek.
To eat better, more nutritious meals, more veggies, but we want it tasty and easy too. No cubes, that's the secret. Made with real ingredients like chicken, parsley, and garlic, and enriched with iron, so your meals are better for you and more delicious too. That's the cocoa. Let's give it some accolades. Change your world by changing what's on your plate.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
Welcome back. The last leg of the program, just have a few more minutes. Well, the people that are concerned, the former chairman of the National Union of Local Government Employees joins us now, Mr. Deji Akinwalere, joins us via Zoom. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Good evening.
All right, Mr. Deji, I'm sure this is like, finally, we got it. Is that your reaction to this announcement?
Well, like many people have said, they say victory at last. So one is quite excited because this is an unprecedented judgment with a lot of courage, with a lot of patriotism. We have started this struggle for the decolonization of local government administration for over 2 decades. Since year 2001, we've been calling for autonomy of local government. We've been asking for good governance. And persistently, consistently, and almost irredeemably, the governors had refused to allow good governance to operate at the local government level, to the extent that almost everywhere, local governments in Nigeria are condemned because they are unable to give any reasonable service delivery. There is no transparency, there is no accountability, there is no opportunity for the citizenry to experience democracy. And the Bible says, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? If there is no democracy at the local government level, then what kind of democracy are we expecting at the national level? So this has been the basis of our struggle, that local government must be decolonized. The governors are running local government worse than the way that colonial master ran local governments or ran administration in Nigeria. The local government had been, people talk about Jack, the state local government joint account, and we've been calling that these things should be abrogated. And we thank God that a judgment had come today that had hearkened to the voice of the people. On several occasions, the 8th Assembly, the 9th Assembly, 10th Assembly, they've been calling for the cancellation of Jack. But the governors will use their strength, will use their power, and muzzle the state houses of assembly to prevent the judgment, to prevent the bill from being passed into law. So for us, this is an unprecedented action coming from President Bola Tinubu. Okay.
Okay, so because we don't have so much time, you know, with great power comes great responsibility and more accountability. So at the different levels, president has immunity.
Yep.
The governor has immunity. The local government chairman doesn't have immunity. So more monies are going to them, and people will be expecting more accountability. How do you think that the citizens, you've been a chairman of former president of Norge, how do you think citizens can ensure that your colleagues who are now, what do you call it now, the people in charge are held accountable to make sure that the money is given to them go to service the cause of the people?
Thank you very much. We have our fears. Because of the enormous powers of the governors, we know there is still a way they will compromise this judgment and force, a lot of these governors to still bring the money back to the government houses. But we believe that through appropriate capacity building, of course, a lot of these abuses will be minimized. Then, secondly, this judgment is going to encourage a lot of responsible people to come to governors. In the past, we've had cases where professors, where doctors, where lecturers, where registrars of university will come and serve as supervisors, as counselors, as chairmen. This judgment is going to encourage that system. We are going to have a situation whereby, by virtue of this attraction of more credible people, corruption will be minimized. There will be opportunity for the development of local leadership. And of course, this is an opportunity for civil society organization, community-based organization. There are a lot, they have certain rights that they have not been exercising by virtue of the power and that the governor has exercised. People should be able now to go to the local government and demand accountability. They should have the right now to exercise their right under the Freedom of Information Bill, to ask for how much has come to the local government and how has the leadership spent this money. So it's a process. This is not Uhuru yet. We know there are still a lot of challenges, and this can be, minimized through capacity building, through regular engagement, through a more participatory activities by the civil society, who hitherto has been limiting their activities to the center. I mean, maybe at the state capitals. They should come down to the local government and engage the government at that level. Then, most importantly, I think this is the time for us to think and start pursuing and demanding that there should be a special court, a special tribunal that should be treating constitutional breaches, so that if after these judgments some governors still go ahead to circumvent the judgment, then people should be able to take them to this constitutional court. I think this is very critical for us, to really say that we are making progress in decolonizing the local government system.
All right, I must thank you, Mr. Deji Akinwalere. Of course, the judgment is going to upset a few things in the polity at the end of the day. I must thank you, former chairman of NOGE, that's the National Union of Local Government Employees. And we wish you the very best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so that's it on the program. Let's hope that this particular judgment will indeed bring the necessary change. So if you are in a local government, there are 774 of them across Nigeria. So by this judgment, it means that monies are going to be going directly to them. It's now time to know the name of your council chairman and hold them accountable for the monies that we put in their hands as our Commonwealth. I must thank you for your time and company. Jeffrey goes on. I appreciate it.
Did you know you can access electoral information with just a click? Introducing Nigeria Elections, an inclusive artificial intelligence platform that guides citizens on Nigeria's electoral and civic landscape. Say bye to misinformation and disinformation. Visit www.nigeriaelections.ng today. Nigeria Elections, addressing democratic questions.
Ba a sanin numfashi na dauke da kwayoyin cututtuka wanda kwayoyin cututtuka ke sanadin haka. Kada mu bari numfashi mu dauke da kwayan cututtuka yayi tasiri. Yi amfani da Close-Up mai dauke da sinadarin zinc da ke kore kwayar cuta. Close-Up mai kore kwayar cuta da ke dauke da numfashi.
First Money is Nigeria's biggest and most preferred